Hi, I'm Rob Roozeboom with the Iowa Developmental Disability Council, and I'm here today with Secretary of State Paul Pate. Thank you so much for opening up your office to us so we can come in and talk about voting and voting for those that have a disability. I'd like to learn just a little bit more. Can you tell us what your office does to ensure the accessible needs for those with disabilities so they can vote?
Certainly. Well, we're talking about a community of 200,000 in our state, more than people recognize.
Sure.
And there are different kinds of disabilities. So partnering with the various organizations who help work with those groups, we've tried to identify some of the needs and some of the options we can do. We have a video that we put out for the disability community to look at so they can see some of the options or explain more what the machine does, how the voting machine itself works. But we do other things from the curbside voting option. We put together a voting accessibility quick check that we actually did with the Disability Rights of Iowa group, which is just a nice little quick reference that the local polling site people get to use to make sure that the site meets all the criteria. You know, watching for the overhead objects, not so people don't get hit, running into chairs, things that in the door work for them. Those kind of issues. We also make sure that they have a complete ADA checklist that comes out from the federal government in that regard. We put out some educational material to our veterans with disabilities and our general disability community on some things so they understand what their rights are and also some of the ways they can get more information to help them in that respect. We work with in many other ways as far as on election day itself. We invite some folks from your organization and others to join us here on election day because if issues come up, we want to resolve them.
Sure.
It's voting time. We can't let this drag out. We got to fix it and get those people successfully through the voting process. Those are all parts of what we do. There's so many other things that we try to encourage. We're looking forward to doing more. We did grants a couple cycles ago where we gave monies to the counties to work with local groups like yours on identifying any hurdles or problems maybe at polling sites in your local jurisdictions. We want to do that again. We want the counties to work with the local groups to identify those things. Those are just a few of the things we're trying to do.
Oh, wonderful. Even though voting is a right and a privilege, sometimes we hear people say voting doesn't matter or my one vote doesn't make a difference. What would you say to that?
Well, we've had some pretty good examples in Iowa that one vote does count. 4 years ago, we had a congressional race, nearly 500,000 people voting, and that race was won by 6 votes. That's pretty significant. But you put it down to the most local level. When you're voting for some of your city council positions, we've seen many, many ties. And now you are drawing a name out of a hat who the winner is. I can tell you as a candidate myself, that's frustrating. You work pretty hard to get elected. You don't want to be drawing a name out of a hat. But the things they do impact your lives. As a former mayor of Cedar Rapids, I'll speak to the disability community. There's strong interest in wanting to know what cities are doing for the disability folks. How are you dealing with the sidewalks? How are you dealing with curb cuts on intersections? How are you dealing with the parking accessibilities? Many of those kinds of basic things, not even talking about the more complicated ones. And you need to have a voice there. And you have a right to make sure your vote gets that kind of representation.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, your vote is important.
Well, thank you again so much for your time today, Secretary Pate. Really appreciate it. Thank you for what your office is doing to help voting be as easy as it possibly can for those with disabilities. Really appreciate it.
We just want everyone to be successful in voting.
Thank you.